Parliamentary Union to strengthen democracy.
It's been a very busy day here in the newsroom. Of course, significant developments from around the world, from Gaza, from Trump's Gaza board of peace to ongoing developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. But of course, there is one issue which has been at the top of every news bulletin all day around the world, and that, of course, is the crisis surrounding Greenland. Of course, the United States, and Donald Trump in particular, is pushing hard on controversial efforts to assert control of ownership of the world's largest island, which is, of course, a self-autonomous part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Europeans have condemned this move and sent a couple of days ago a group of troops to the island, which Donald Trump then responded with tariffs. Now, many European countries, including France, Norway, and others, have responded to this, condemning it extremely strongly. We have had the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, kick off today, which of course brings all and many leaders from around the world together, including Europeans, and President Donald Trump, who is set to speak on Wednesday. We've had more statements from the US Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. He's dismissed fears of a trade war and said that relations with Europe remain strong despite the dispute at Davos. Now, we've also seen European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen say that Europe will respond proportionately to the US tariffs, 10% of which is supposed to be imposed on these 8 European countries on the 1st of February. Now we've had another response to this, and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has weighed in, calling Greenland not a natural part of Denmark and framing the situation as symptomatic of a NATO crisis, though Russia denies any intention to intervene in the situation. Of course, it's all been a very busy day with statements from diplomats from all around the world giving their 2 cents on this ongoing issue. Joining us now is Meher Karuna. She's going to give us a rundown of further developments surrounding the Greenland situation.
Well, yes, Thomas, we can clearly see an escalating matter here, as US President Donald Trump was earlier signaling that he was interested in buying the Arctic region of Greenland. But now this has shifted and escalated to him possessing the island. Now, apart from that, earlier today, Trump took on his Truth Social platform where he has posted an AI-generated image of him, Marco Rubio, as well as US Vice President J.D. Vance, all of them standing, and with that there was a flag saying that Greenland is the US territory established in 2026. Now Trump on his Truth Social is showing that Canada, Greenland and Venezuela are a part of the United States. Apart from that, as you mentioned earlier, now speaking in Davos at the World Economic Forum, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he made some comments, and I would like to go through some of them. He said that the European allies should not retaliate against the tariffs that Trump has imposed on them, and he's described Greenland as an essential area, and he said that it is essential for the Golden Dome, which is the missile shield that protects the United States. Now, to remind our viewers that there is still a February 1st deadline on a lot of the European countries, and we are exactly now 11 days away from the 10 days away from the February 1st tariff deadline. And the US is set to impose a 10% tariff on Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands and Finland. And he's also threatened to raise these tariffs up to 25% in June, until and unless these European nations they agree for the complete and total purchase of Greenland. Apart
Yes.
from that, in a direct counter move, 58 Danish combat troops landed in Greenland, and they have joined the 60 which were already there on the ground. And they are led by a chief of the Royal Danish Army. And this is part of an Operation Arctic Endurance, which is a multinational exercise which is intended to signal that the island is not an undefeated vacuum. Now, apart from that, as you mentioned earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron, while speaking in Davos today, he said that the US tariffs are completely unacceptable and crazy. And he's also accused Washington of trying to subordinate Europe through this territorial leverage. Comments have also come in from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and she's responded saying that the tariffs are a fundamental error. Apart from that, as you mentioned, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Greenland is not a national part of Denmark, and he's called it a territorial gain. It's also important to note that a delegation of US congressmen are currently in Copenhagen, and they are distancing themselves from the president's plan and are trying their best to calm the waters there. Apart from that, Greenlandic Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen has also held a press conference where it was stated that while the use of force by the US seems unlikely to the Prime Minister, it cannot be ruled out. And as we've seen earlier, US Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has clearly said that the US is not ruling out the use of force for this accusation. Apart from that, we'll bring you all the developments as and when they take place. Over to you.
Meher, thank you very much for filling us in there on that ongoing situation. Of course, as Meher says, we'll continue to bring you updates on that developing situation here on the program. But coming up next, of course, Donald Trump's assembling of his so-called Board of Peace continues, with new members joining, including the United Arab Emirates. They today joined the likes of Kazakhstan and Hungary, who joined up yesterday and have pledged that $1 billion lifetime fee to now chair of Board of Peace, Donald Trump. Of course, we have also had news now that Russia has been invited to join the board, a controversial move given its war in Ukraine, of course, though Moscow is still considering its response. There are official refusals from some Western allies, which of course Donald Trump has raised his dismay about. France and Norway, two NATO members, being two of those refusals. Donald Trump even went so far as to threaten verbally 200% tariffs on Emmanuel Macron's Paris, due to the fact that he has accepted the Gaza peace plan, but does not accept the Board of Peace, as it is so called. Many analysts are, of course, bringing up that this might rival the United Nations, and the board structure and relationship with institutions like the United Nations remains uncontested, with UN officials pushing back on any attempt to sideline traditional peace frameworks. Joining us now, once again, is Meher Karuna. She's going to give us a bit of a rundown on this situation as well.
Well, yes, Thomas. Now, the second phase of Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan has begun, with Trump recently unveiling his Gaza Board of Peace. Apart from that, US President Donald Trump has said that this board is supposed to mandate the governance of the Strip, to govern, rebuild and stabilize the Gaza Strip. And a lot of invitations have been sent, as you said, to Russia as well as to Ukraine, to India, Pakistan, while we've also seen that Hungary has already accepted this invitation to become a member of this Gaza Peace Board. Apart from that, recently the UAE's president, United Arab Emirates president, has also officially accepted, and he's joined Hungary, and he's also joined Vietnam's Tulam in this to become a member in this board. Now, the board's immediate task is to oversee the October 2025 ceasefire that took place between Israel and Hamas. And today, the board announced that the formation of the National Committee for Administration of Gaza, the NCAG, which will be led by the Palestinian civil engineer Ali Saad. Apart from that, analysts in Davos are calling this a direct challenge to the United States, the formation of this board entirely. The board aims to mandate the International Stabilization Force, which is a multinational peacekeeping mission that bypasses the traditional United Nations Security Council bureaucracy. Now, the Norwegian Prime Minister, he's confirmed that he's received a text from Donald Trump, and he stated that since he has denied the Nobel Peace Prize, he no longer feels an obligation to think purely of peace. As I mentioned earlier, Ukraine has also received an invitation, but Zelensky has noted that the impossibility of sitting on a board alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin because he was also invited. Now, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has confirmed this invite and has said that they are reviewing the proposal as of now. Now, from the World Economic Forum, French President Emmanuel Macron has denounced the board as an attempt to subordinate Europe. He's also criticized the $1 billion seat prize as a territorial and diplomatic blackmail from the United States directly. Now, France has stated that the board's charter undermines the very structure of the United Nations. And in response, Trump threatened a 200% tariff on French wines and champagnes, which is very important for France and their economy. And he stated that if they feel hostile, they'll pay. This is what Trump has said to Emmanuel Macron. Now, Norway has confirmed and has declined the invitation into this Board of Peace, and the country's deputy foreign minister has expressed concerns about the framework in his statements. We've also seen that Israel is not happy over the inclusion of Qatari diplomat and Turkish foreign minister in this, and Netanyahu has pledged that Turkish and Qatari soldiers will never set foot in Gaza. He's also told the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio that the countries that inspired Hamas cannot be the ones to replace it. This obviously comes after a leaked draft charter was sent to about 60 countries by the United States, and which states that there's a $1 billion payment to acquire a permanent seat into this board. Now, it's important to understand that where does this money go? The White House claims that it is for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, but some critics are pointing out that the charter allows the chairman, who's obviously US President Donald Trump, to allocate funds as appropriate for global stability. Now, apart from that, let's break down some of the members of this Gaza Peace Board. As I mentioned earlier, we have US President Donald Trump as the chair. He'll be serving a lifetime as the chair. Our first member is Tony Blair, who is the former British Prime Minister, and he's the only non-US citizen of the founding board. Our second member is Marco Rubio, who's US Secretary of State. Third is Steve Witkoff, who's US Special Envoy. We also have Jared Kushner, who's Trump's son-in-law and advisor. We have Mark Robin, who's CEO of Apollo Global Management. We also have Ajay Banga, who's the president of World Bank. Our seventh and the last official member is Robert Gabriel, who's the US National Security Advisor. Now, Trump is supposed to land in Davos on Wednesday, and he's supposed to speak there, and he's also expected to hold a meeting with the founding members and host a dinner for them, for those who have already signed on to this Board of Peace. And we will be tracking this news tomorrow, and we'll bring you all the updates as and when they come. Over to you, Thomas.
Meher, thank you so much for that insight. We have some breaking news coming in, and the Chernobyl plant in Ukraine, of course known for that disaster back in the 1990s, has now lost all off-site power due to intense Russian drone and missile strikes reported on Ukraine's grid earlier today. This is coming from the IAEA, the United Nations' atomic body. Power has since been restored and the facility is now connected to Ukraine's energy grid once again. Radiation levels are reported as normal and within safe levels. The plant, of course, is decommissioned but remains potentially vulnerable in the conflict. The shifts in power status were triggered by infrastructure attacks rather than direct damage to nuclear systems. We now move on to the conflict itself, and of course fighting continues in Europe's east with renewed aerial offences flying between borders. Of course there is huge contention over Russia's ongoing barrage of Ukrainian energy infrastructure in the midst of a biting Eastern European winter. Where Ukraine's energy grid was hammered overnight with drones and missiles leaving major cities like Kiev in darkness and in these cold conditions, impacting the civilian population severely. These attacks compound ongoing US-led peace negotiation efforts where Kiev is pushing for broader support and security guarantees at forums including Davos this week. Now, it's unknown if President Zelensky and Donald Trump are going to meet. Both are set to be in attendance with both their delegations. But of course, that is to be seen whether the two come face to face in Switzerland at some point this week. Meher is here to give us more once again. Meher, what have you got for us?
Well, yes, Thomas, a lot behind the doors. Now, Ukrainian delegations have spoken to Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and they've said that the US delegation is pressuring the Ukrainian ones to sign a framework for peace before the end of this week. Now, Trump's message to Kyiv is very clear. He said that the last mile is the most difficult one and it's time to walk it. Now, even as the peace talks intensify, Russia, as you said, has launched a massive drone and missile barrage today, and they involved hundreds of drones, cruise, ballistic missiles that hit Kiev and other regions overnight. And this is obviously a part of Russia's sustained winter offensive. Now, Kiev's power grid and energy infrastructure were the main targets in this strike. And Zelensky has said that the United States must increase pressure on Russia after these strikes took place, and has cut heating to half of Ukraine in this freezing temperature. Now, Kiev and other regions saw energy infrastructure that crippled down. The strikes severely damaged electricity, heating and water systems in Kiev, and thousands of apartment buildings are now without power and heat amid the sub-zero temperature. Now, officials say that the buildings had only just restored utilities after the attacks took place overnight. Now, over 5,600 multi-story residential buildings have lost heating power, and a major blow. This is obviously a major blow in this harsh winter condition that Ukraine has to face after these strikes. Now, in response to these increasing aerial threats, Ukraine has denounced a new air defense strategy which will feature mobile fire units and intercopter drones to batter Russia's strikes, which they keep on doing. Now, Zelensky has said that he also received an invitation to join the Gaza Peace of Board, Board of Peace, as I mentioned earlier, but he stated that it's impossible to sit on the same table with Russia and Belarus being there. Now, for a nation whose economy is shattered by this war, 4-year war, the fee of being viewed in this board is like a diplomatic tax. And as we discussed earlier, there's a $1 billion bracket that Kiev would have to complete in order to become a member. Now, Zelensky has noted that the peace agreement is 90% ready, but he's warned that the remaining 10% is everything that matters, and it is the last steps into restoring peace in Ukraine. Now, Zelensky's chief advisor and lead negotiator in these peace talks has clarified that the 90% that is being referred to here are the ceasefire lines in territorial zones, but the 10% deadlock is over Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, territorial concessions here include the US plan, which reportedly demands Ukraine to abandon its constitutional claims over the Donbas region and the Crimea in exchange for guaranteed peace and security. Now, Zelensky has also addressed Trump's recurring demand for elections in the country. He stated that he's ready to hold a vote within the next 60 to 90 days, but only if US and Europe can provide a total security shield to Ukraine. Now, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has also said that he's claimed that the US attempt to buy Greenland proves that NATO is in a terminal deep crisis, and he suggested that US is now a bigger threat to European borders than Russia is. Over to you, Thomas.
Meher, thank you very much for giving us that insight. We finalise this newsroom episode with news from Spain, where unfortunately a tragic incident occurred when a high-speed train crash near the Ademuz region has killed at least 41 people, where two trains, one from Malaga to Madrid and the other from Madrid to Huelva, collided after the rear of one derailed and struck another. Spanish authorities have declared 3 days of national mourning and launched a full-scale investigation into the incident. And early indications point to a possible rail joint failure or a track defect, but investigators have not yet confirmed the final cause. Rescue teams are using heavy machinery to reach the most damaged carriages to identify victims, and families are being assisted via dedicated centres. A young child survived despite using her immediate family, a rare and poignant note amid the tragedy. This is one of Spain's deadliest rail accidents in over a decade and threatens rail confidence in the country. Of course, there a tragic development coming out of Spain. We'll of course keep you updated in all the developments that come out of that situation. Well, that's all that we have time for today on this episode of the Newsroom. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates. Thank you.